Can Catholicism adapt to modern challenges? Perhaps said a different way, should Catholicism adapt to modern challenges? Should we be relatable to the people, to the youngins in particular? I want to get into this, and specifically I want to talk about the canary in the coal mine that's sounding the alarm. Danger, danger, danger that I don't find too many people talking about. And spoiler alert, it's Poland. But before we get to Poland, I want to share the latest Pew Research. I'll link to it below. Make sure to smash that thumbs up on your way down. But about 3 in 10 U.S. Catholics say that they attend Mass weekly or more often. 3 in 10. According to a recent article over at Crisis Magazine, Catholics are rapidly losing ground. This was from just about a month ago. In fact, we had a conversation with Eric Sammons. I'll link to that in the card or down below as well. But Eric told us, and according to this article, for every 1 Catholic that comes into the church, 8 are leaving out the back door. And where are they going? Are they becoming Protestants? No, mostly they're not. Mostly they're becoming nuns, not affiliated, agnostic, atheistic at best. They're basically secularists at this point. Let that sink in. The only reason why we can keep any statistical numbers looking okay in our country here in the United States is because of immigrants who come to this country as Catholics and identify as Catholics. Could that be the reason why U.S. bishops are so adamant about allowing them in, illegal or otherwise? We talked about that with Eric Sammons. Again, I'll link to it. But lest you think it's only an American problem, oh no. Oh, but wait, there's more, lots more. I reported on this on the radio program last week, but here's another article on the subject. The German church has lost 4 million faithful in just the last 10 years. Let that sink in. 522,000 plus left in 2022. 402,000 plus left in 2023. Last year, in 2024, 321,000 plus people officially left the Catholic faith in 2024, just a year ago. 4 million over the last decade. There is no salvation outside of the one Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, the only church Christ has founded, and 4 million souls in Germany alone has said goodbye. Let that sink in. But at least, Joe, at least we have Poland. Or do we? There's a video out by Deutsche Welle News. Again, I'm going to link to it below. I want to react to this video with you, and we can look at what's going on in Poland right now. And then we can ask ourselves the question, can Catholicism adapt to modern challenges? Hold that thought. Let's have a listen to Deutsche Welle.
A typical Sunday morning in Poland. 3 churches hold Mass, and in all 3 the pews are nearly empty. Is the Catholic Church in Poland facing a crisis?
All 3 are nearly empty. Is there a crisis in Poland? Let's have a listen.
The Christian church doesn't have a good reputation right now.
I'm not a believer. The church is a profoundly toxic institution.
The church is a profoundly toxic institution. Knowing nothing about this young lady that just said that, I mean, you might make some guesses that she probably sees the world through a very secular lens.
But then, one church breaks the pattern. St. John's Church in Gdansk. Every Sunday, Rector Krzysztof Niedautowski fills his church with people, with music, and with sermons that hold up an unflinching...
You probably thought that they were going to show a traditional Latin Mass church, didn't you? By the way, you notice this gentleman standing off in the corner there? Isn't this the guy that they just interviewed a minute ago? It sure looks like him, doesn't it? Does to me. But you probably thought that they were going to interview a traditional Latin Mass parish as the one example. Well, they didn't. This place looks full. Wonder why? Choral altar servers. Looks like we have boomers up at the altar. Certainly it's a Novus Ordo parish. So it's not what we thought it was going to be. Let's still listen.
Mirror to the congregation.
Young people.
Every one of us is something of a hypocrite.
True.
An actor. Someone trying to look different, better, more positive in the eyes of others than we really are.
Honesty? Yeah, great. I totally agree. 100%, and I'm speaking only for myself.
These sermons really impress me. He interprets the Gospels in a way that feels relevant to our times.
Feels relevant to our times. I think that's important. You want to make the gospel approachable. In fact, is that not the one job of every priest, is to take the gospel and crack it open, to meditate upon that message that Holy Mother Church wants us to? I mean, in fact, that's one of the most annoying things I find at masses is when they proclaim the gospel and then say nothing about it in the homily.
I know there's a crisis in the Polish church, and young people especially are distrustful. But that depends on how you engage with them. If you take people seriously and speak in a normal way, that makes a big difference.
But the half-empty churches reflect the reality of Catholicism in many parts of Poland. On the streets, however, it's a different picture. Buildings and squares are covered with images of John Paul II.
Don't you mean St. John Paul II? I mean, he was canonized fairly quickly, and everybody thought he was John Paul the Great when he died. We're remembering 20 years ago now, basically, of JP2's passing. And yet Poland is worse off now than ever before. Even ever before under the reign of communism, under the reign of Nazism. And still, it's under this secular atheism that it seems to be suffering the most.
The Polish Pope, still admired and even venerated as a saint 20 years after his death.
I'm afraid I no longer have much to do with the Catholic faith. So for me, John Paul II is purely of historical significance. I don't feel any spiritual connection.
No spiritual connection with the Catholic faith. Where is that deep-rooted Catholic culture of Poland? Wasn't it Poland that consecrated itself to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, consecrated its country? And yet its younger generations are more and more secular. I mean, how do they stack up and rate against what we saw here at the Pew Research, that 3 in 10 U.S. Catholics go to Mass on a regular basis? Let's find out.
Poland was once home to Europe's most devout Catholics. The Church no longer releases current membership statistics. But surveys show that many 18 to 25-year-olds want nothing to do with it.
18 to 25-year-olds want nothing to do with it.
30 years ago, nearly 2/3 of young Poles practiced their faith. Today, it's fewer than 1 in 4.
Fewer than 1 in 4 18 to 25-year-olds, or whatever they said, are practicing their Catholic faith. They have sold their heritage for a pot of stew.
I'm especially critical of the role of priests and the abuse of their power. Religion and church institutions should be kept separate from the state.
That's a heresy, actually. St. Pius X wrote about that in Pascendi, and he talked about how the state needs to be governed. The Holy Mother Church needs to help the state govern its people. You have to tie the governance to a moral ethos. That moral ethos, the proper one, is, of course, the one Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, the only church Christ founded. He only gave us one body. He didn't give us many. He didn't come to found 10,000 flavors. You make it up. Hey, that's not what he's done. And yet, young Catholics seem to believe that we should have a separation. We should be able to do whatever we want. We should be able to think it up.
Why have so many Poles turned away from the church? At the University of Gdansk, religious scholar Krzysztof Ulanowski is
Look at this, professor. I mean, wow. I guess if you're dressing like that, that says a lot, doesn't it?
looking for answers.
Young people want to live by their own values and freedoms. They don't want anyone telling them what's right or wrong.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because that's one of the common arguments against religion in general, Christianity and specifically, is they feel like it's asking them to live by a bunch of rules. I know I felt that way in a period of my life where I was out of control, doing bad things, making bad choices. But why does God give us freedom? God respects our freedom, our free will. He gave us free will. He creates us. He breathes life into us, gives us free will. And he respects it so much that he's willing to allow us to choose hell over him for all eternity. Think about this. You only exist because God thinks of you. He keeps you in his mind, and therefore you exist. If he were to cease thinking of you, you would cease existing. You're going to exist for all eternity, in heaven or in hell. Maybe you go by way of purgatory towards heaven, but either way, for all eternity, you will exist because God will think of you. Even when you are in hell, he will have you on his mind, and you will exist separated from him. He created a place to respect your free choice of rejecting him and being separate. The very fact that you are separated from God is hell. He respects your freedom. Why did he give you freedom? So that you could do the right thing, so that you would not be a slave to him, but that you might leverage your freedom to love him, to serve him in this life and in the next. And professors like this seem to not understand the basic concepts.
From their point of view, the church often goes too far.
What exactly are those interventions? One example is abortion. The former right-wing populist government introduced an almost total ban, sparking mass protests. But
mass protests because total bans. I mean, let that just sink in. If we are buying the lie of the world, the flesh, and the devil, maybe we ought to go back and read James's epistle, chapter 4 in particular. Be not a friend of the world. We're talking about the death of babies here. My body, my choice. What about the baby's choice? And I'll never forget the image of that young man, that young Polish man, who was the only one to stand in the way of an oncoming rainbow pride parade with his crucifix in hand, and he was dragged away. Remember that iconic image of that guy? Where are the other 9?
But the church supported the government's position.
Does the church not like women? Of course, the church loves women. But we can't allow the murder of babies simply because it's an inconvenience to you. You can't take your freedom and abuse it, use it for abuse. This would be wrong, and no one should stand by and tolerate that. That would lack charity for one's neighbor.
Whether the church gets involved in politics should be a matter of personal conscience. The church is meant to be universal. Universal.
Now here comes the rub. Yeah, remember we were talking about earlier about how you might be surprised, maybe the church that's doing so well and growing so much is the traditional church. And in fact, statistically, traditional communities do grow much faster, much healthier than suburban going Novus Ordo parishes. That's a conversation I had with Eric Sammons, and we talked about that. He certainly mentions it in his article, again linked below. But notice what Father said here. Hey, listen, politics, it's all you, whatever you want to do that, fine. That's not the church's business. I'm sorry, Christ is king. He's king of everything. He's not king of some things. He's not king of some people. He's king of kings and lord of lords of everything and everywhere, to include politics. How about Paul VI? You like Paul VI? Well, read Paul VI. Read Evangelii Nuntiandi. Even Paul VI makes it clear in Evangelii Nuntiandi that the hierarchy of the church is to form the church and then form the lay faithful in the faith. And then the lay faithful are supposed to go out and dominate society in politics and in art, in culture, in all these spaces, in media, all these spaces, and bring the gift of faith into those spaces. That's how it works. That's how the lay faithful and the clergy cooperate together to serve the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. The church does not belong to the hierarchy. It belongs to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And you better believe he's got an opinion on politics.
That means non-partisan.
Nicht parteiisch.
No, it means natural Thomistic philosophy and theology. It is either
Non-partisan.
It is either right or it is wrong to murder children. It's either right or wrong to commit an abortion. It's either right or wrong to use contraception. It's either right or wrong for in vitro fertilization. It's either right or wrong to divorce and remarry. It's either right or wrong to do all of these things. Anything you can think of. The church has an opinion on these things. And it's not because the church wants to be stuffy, mean, or hard. It's because it is the revelation given by God the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost through his one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church to the world. But we, the members of that church, because of our concupiscent natures, well, we tend to mess it up.
And accountable. The Polish church has faced hundreds of allegations of sexual abuse and has been accused of dragging its feet when it comes to investigations and compensating victims.
Yeah, something we've talked about many times on my radio program. We have to turn the light on in the kitchen and watch the cockroaches scramble because they need to know they do not own the kitchen. And for too many years, we have allowed this to go on our watch. And the loudest, most critical voice of all of the wolves in sheep's clothing, all of the scandals that have rocked Holy Mother Church, all of the evil committed and perpetuated on the lay faithful, driving so many tens of thousands out of the church into the hands of the devil, the diabolic, the world, the flesh, etc. We need to be the loudest and most critical voice. We do. We need to lead the way in cleaning up the mess. We do not leave this to the secularists, the Protestants, or anybody else. This is on our watch. We need to deal with it. And we do. We speak about it all the time. All the time.
On top of that, many Poles view the church's funding model as outdated. Each year, millions of euros from the state budget go to the Catholic Church.
This is similar in Germany, which is why the Germans are very, very concerned, because as they no longer identify as Catholic, they lose their funding. That's why these numbers are so incredibly tragic to the German church. They get their tithe comes through the government, whereas in the United States, our tithe goes into the basket. And so they get a direct response from us. And so for many now years, generations even, someone could identify as Catholic but never go to Mass. And when they pay their taxes, a portion of that goes to that local church. Same thing in Poland, apparently. Because you want more, and I want to give it to you. I'm rolling out a brand new membership program for the insiders of this channel. Join today. There's something for everyone. And because you could help me fund the next documentary film, the next book project, audio drama, audio narrations, and other projects that I have been dreaming to work on, but simply don't have the resources to accomplish. You and I together can do amazing things. You want more, and I want to give it to you.
At St. John's, the rector wraps up another sermon, this one with a hint of self-irony.
Sure, I forgive myself. I know myself well enough. I'm no pig. I'm basically an honest person.
I'm not a murderer after all. I'm all right, Father. Listen, I don't murder anybody. Other than that, what about your use of pornography? What about the fact that you haven't tempered your tongue or your anger towards your neighbor? Or, we all have our sins that we go to confession for over and over again. What you don't want to hear when you go to confession is, I'm generally a good guy. I'm generally a nice person, and that's fine. No. I want to accuse myself now on this side of the heavenly veil so that I can stand on the other side of the heavenly veil. This is your opportunity. Be honest. Root out sin, because as Revelation 21:27 makes clear, nothing unclean shall enter it. If you use the I'm generally basically a good person argument, you're going to lose big on the other side.
He believes the church's outdated structures can still be reformed.
Outdated structures. I wonder what this guy thinks about outdated structures. Because for the last going on, what, 6 decades now, 7 decades? What have we seen? The statistics don't lie. We see a falling and failing church. We see 8 people leaving for every 1 entering. We see churches shuttering their doors, church parish communities having to combine together in order to just share resources, and buildings being sold off to Freemasons and Muslim communities to be reused for other purposes. We see the decimation of religious communities. We see scandal after scandal after scandal, and we're seeing millions leave the church. Outdated structures? I don't know. Maybe outdated structures not our biggest problem here.
I believe in small groups, the church from below. That's where life is. That's where something more authentic can grow, far more than in the top-down Polish church of the past.
Oh, so you, like Martin Luther, you just don't want a boss. Is that it? I mean, is that what I'm reading here, Father? Because maybe it's just that it's not that you're opposed to, structure or hierarchy. It's just that you want to be at the top of the heap. And by cutting off the top that's above you, well, that makes you king of the hill, I suppose. Kind of like Martin Luther. Christ founded a church. A church. I want you to let this sink in for a second. Something I've talked about many times in my Bible study, on the radio program, in my talks that I've given at parishes. There is a discernible design going all the way back to Genesis chapter 1 and carrying all the way to the end of Revelation. God has a design for his church, his ecclesia, his assembly, his people. It includes Christ the King, his inner 3, Peter, James, and John, his 12, the 70 disciples. It includes the sacraments. All of this was prefigured in the Old Testament. If you're interested in getting more into the weeds on that design, I went through an entire Bible study on salvation history. It's a 13-session study on salvation history. All you got to do is click that join button below and you'll get access to that. Or if you're in the Telegram group, you've had it there. Or if you were on the Bible study before, you have access to it as well. But the design is, when David in 2 Samuel 7, when he had this covenant with God, a covenant for Adam, for mankind, it included even the Gentiles. All of that prefigured in the old has come to its fulfillment and perfection in the new under Jesus Christ. Brings us to the original question. Can Catholicism adapt to modern challenges? No. Said another way, should Catholicism adapt to modern challenges? No. Catholicism needs to meet modernism with truth itself. Jesus Christ says, I am the way, the truth, and the life in John 14. No one comes to the Father but by me. That truth needs to be proclaimed to everyone, young and old, around the world, no matter their culture. Why? Because truth will set us free. Truth died on a cross for love of us, that we might, if we participate in that grace, be saved. It's an amazing gift, and the world needs to hear it. The greatest charity you can have for your neighbor is to share Christ and his one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church with them. It's by design. It's by design. And any attempt to put lipstick on a pig and pretend as though just, acquiescing to people's modernist, secularist, agnostic, atheistic whims are going to somehow help them, we are only doing them a disservice. We would lack love for those people. Poland is the canary in the coal mine. We don't have Poland. We don't have Ireland. But you're thinking Africa, right? Think again. Africa's not looking all that great either. We have big problems. So let's spend the rest of whatever time we have with air in our lungs, praying, fasting, and doing penance. And every opportunity the Holy Ghost gives you to proclaim the good, the true, and the beautiful, do so, especially if you have that chance in charity and in truth. planting a seed in the hearts of your pastor, your bishop, or any prince of Holy Mother Church, and encourage them to become saints, because that's the only people who make it to heaven. It's saints. Let's pray for Poland and pray for your country and mine while we still can. Let me know what you think below. God love you.